with that, we'll go straight to our first afternoon session. So our first speaker, Zoltan Vardy, is a seasoned business executive who is also a very, very passionate startup mentor. He has developed the 9-step process on how to scale and build a successful business that he's gonna share with all of you. He has been a senior executive at NBC Universal, ProSieben, one of the big European media groups, and he has built businesses creating hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue. So I hope you can learn from him really how to successfully build and scale a business. Please all give a warm welcome to our friend from Budapest and London, Zoltan Vardy.
So just with a show of hands, if I could ask you, who in the audience considers themselves to be an entrepreneur? You mean you've built a business from scratch, you've created value, you've done the process of building something from nothing. So I saw a quick show of hands, I'd say probably about half of you. Depending, of course, on where you are in that journey, whether it's early on in the process or if you're a seasoned entrepreneur, you'll have a different perception of what it means to be an entrepreneur. And certainly if you've never built a business, a lot of what I'll be talking about today will seem very new. For me personally, I discovered what it meant to be an entrepreneur over 20 years ago. It was the year 2000, and I was living in Southern California at the epicenter of what could be called the golden age of the internet. Companies like Amazon, eBay, Yahoo, all of these companies were just a few years old. And Netflix was still sending people by DVDs by mail, and I think Mark Zuckerberg was still in high school. Well, I was a 29-year-old vice president of sales at CBS Television in Los Angeles, and all of these people around me were leaving these cushy corporate jobs to build something new and to become paper millionaires. And it was really an inspiring time in internet history, so to speak. And they were going out to launch what were called .com companies. That's what they used to call startups or tech companies 20 years ago. And so I got the inclination to join my fellow young business people, and I left my job. I joined forces with my brother, and we moved to Budapest, Hungary to create what we called the Yahoo of Central and Eastern Europe, a network of local language internet portals targeting local internet users in markets of Central and Eastern Europe. We raised about $1.5 million of investment from angel investors. We prepared ourselves for what we thought was the experience. We ended up building and selling the company to strategic investors in a mere 18 months. It felt like 18 years. Some of the experiences were absolutely amazing. I mean, being able to motivate partners, advertisers, employees to share your vision for the company. That first big deal we closed with Hewlett-Packard, which justified the risk that we had taken leaving our jobs behind to create something from nothing. That sense of purpose that comes with launching a company, all of that was fantastic. Other parts of it were devastating. The constant obstacles that you have to overcome on a day-to-day basis, things you never thought could ever happen. The management of cash flow, the disagreement over strategy with partners, with investors, all of that stuff made it an extremely difficult experience. And what it made me realize is that actually being an entrepreneur is like riding this emotional roller coaster that never ends, right? You're on that train track and you're sitting at the bottom and you're starting to go up and up that hill, that 80-meter high hill, and as you get to the top of it, you look out and you feel like you're king of the world. You're looking down at everybody and you feel like there's nothing that you can't achieve. And then suddenly, when you least expect it, you start plummeting down to earth at 90 miles an hour, and people around you are screaming and they're laughing at you, and you feel like, God, this is not what I signed up for. The fact is that very few people can ride that emotional roller coaster for very long. I mean, the statistics, they speak for themselves. About 90% of startups fail. Half of small businesses don't live past their 5th year. Yet there is still entrepreneurs, founders, who somehow manage to overcome these obstacles to build a long-term, sustainable, and profitable business. And I have to ask myself, what do they do differently? Why is it that they are capable of ultimately building a sustainable and long-term profitable business? Now, I've had the pleasure of working with some amazing entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs from the Central European region, very accomplished entrepreneurs in the UK, Germany. I myself have, as an angel investor and as advisor, work with business-to-business tech founders, helping them scale their sales, helping them build predictable recurring revenues using a system I created called the Launch Code. And so I've got a sense of what it is that these folks do well. But I've also studied some of, you could say, historical figures who have really created innovation at a scale that was never done before. And I've discovered a couple of things, a couple of qualities that I think captures what separates these folks from everybody else. Why is it that they are able to thrive while others barely survive? This is what I call the entrepreneur secret. And it's 3 behaviors. Focus, the ability to have a very, very clear vision for what they want to achieve, and the ability to develop a path that gets them there. Agility, the ability to solve problems quickly and to take opportunities as they present themselves and make the most of them. And finally, persistence, an unwavering belief in their mission and the willingness to do whatever it takes to succeed. Pay attention to these qualities as I go through them individually, and at the end, I'll actually issue a challenge. So please keep your mind on this and see where you measure up in comparison to some of the folks I'll be talking about. So when I think of focus, the first person that jumps to mind is Steve Jobs, pictured here at age 25 at what was called Apple Computer at the time. Apple, at this moment in juncture, was a one-trick pony. They had a single desktop computer called the Apple II. They were about 4 years old, and Steve Jobs was really at the beginning of his journey. And I saw a video of a presentation that he did to a group of business people in Southern California. And in this presentation, he talks about how the biggest obstacle that computer companies at the time, back in 1980, had to overcome was that wall that existed in the minds of people between them and their ability to use a computer. And how, at that time, you basically had to be sort of a programmer to be able to use a personal computer. And he goes on to talk about how he thinks that Apple Computer is for this problem, because the entire philosophical foundation of the company is built on breaking down that wall so that people can solve simple problems on a day-to-day basis simply through their computers. Now, a bit of context here. This was 1980. There was no such thing as the commercial World Wide Web. There was no such thing as a laptop computer. There was no such thing as a mobile phone. There was no such thing as apps. There was no Wi-Fi. All that stuff that is part of our day-to-day lives today did not exist. And here I was, laying in bed, ready to go to sleep, watching Steve Jobs speak on YouTube on an iPad that I was holding in my lap. This guy had an unbelievable vision for what he wanted to achieve, an unbelievable focus that he actually brought to life every single day. He would ask his senior executives regularly, "What have you said no to today?" He wanted to make sure they focused on what was important at all times. Now, the interesting thing about successful entrepreneurs is they don't just focus for the sake of focusing. They turn that actually into implementation. How do they do that? Well, first, they create a really clear pathway that leads to their desired outcome. They develop products that are easy to use and easy to scale. They find sales and marketing strategies that enable their customers to buy easily. They build teams of people who bring skills to the table that they don't have. And they find funding so that they can finance the growth of the company. When you think of Steve Jobs, that vision that he had articulated back in 1980, he brought to life through a series of products. First the Apple Macintosh, then the Apple laptop, then the iPod, the iPad, the iPhone, all of those bringing that vision to life through practical products. They know how to say no to opportunities that are out of focus. This is a critical skill that successful entrepreneurs have. They don't suffer from shiny object syndrome, right? That next big thing, that thing that's in the out of focus, that customer who isn't particularly the right fit, that opportunity that just takes them away from the path that they see leading directly to their desired outcome. This ability to say no is critical. There's a guy named Tim Ferriss who is an author and entrepreneur. He wrote a book called The 4-Hour Work Week. And he says that it's important to say either hell yes or a flat no to things, because kind of cool will fill up your schedule and leave you wondering, what have you done for the past year? The third thing that entrepreneurs do to apply focus is they evaluate their progress so they don't stray. So they have a clear idea of what they want to achieve. They're constantly evaluating the managing their performance. And if there's a gap between where they want to be and where they are, they fill that gap very quickly. So my question to you is, how focused are you? Do you have a clear vision for the company that you want to build and a path that will get you there? Do you say no to things that lead you astray? And are you managing your performance? Are you seeing where you are and where you want to be? And are you filling the gap accordingly? The second quality that successful entrepreneurs have is agility. Now, agility is the ability to move your body in different ways while you are in motion. Think of a basketball player weaving through the crowd of players as they're dribbling down the court. That's agility. Mental agility is the ability to solve problems quickly under huge pressure. Successful entrepreneurs have an amazing ability to solve problems quickly and efficiently. Elon Musk is in the news a lot for a lot of things these days. But before he was a Twitter influencer, and millions waited for him to burp something on Twitter so that they could respond, he actually was just another guy trying to build a business. It was 2008. He had had a huge exit from PayPal, and he had put all of his money into building two companies, SpaceX and Tesla, and they were bleeding cash. He was so out of money that he literally had to borrow money to pay for rent. And so he found himself in a unique situation. You see, NASA had traditionally only paid its suppliers after they had delivered whatever solution they were paid for. And Elon Musk turned this business model on its head. He went to NASA and he was able to negotiate a $1.5 billion advance payment on technology that he would use to build the Falcon rockets, which he would ultimately use to deliver 19 successful missions for NASA on a commercial basis. He funneled some of that money into Tesla, and well, the rest is history. So, how do entrepreneurs express their agility on a day-to-day basis? Well, they focus on solutions and not on problems. Product development is slow, hire more or better programmers. Your sales are not tracking well, revisit your value proposition. Is your team not the right fit? Then find more or better people. Don't have enough money? Save money in the short term, ensure funding in the long term. They build what I call execution momentum, which means that they're constantly solving problems. And when you get into the habit of solving problems, it actually creates an interesting dynamic, because one solution leads to the next solution, to the next solution. And so after a while, you're able to generate that sense of flow, right? That sense of feeling where everything is going your way. You cannot do wrong. Who here has experienced that in their work life? It's amazing, isn't it? Right? I mean, if you could bottle that and sell it, you'd be a billionaire. Entrepreneurs have flow on a regular basis. They also adapt quickly to change and opportunities. They come across unexpected chances to build their business, and they grab at them. So there's a company, a Hungarian startup called Colmet Robotics, who I advised a few years ago. And this is basically a group of physicists, scientists who created a technology to operate drone swarms. And they've applied this technology to put together these huge outdoor drone light shows. You're familiar with them? They're kind of replacing fireworks in a lot of ways. And so this team of entrepreneurs was faced with an interesting opportunity. You see, through a various set of circumstances, they were presented with the opportunity to do a drone light show for the British royal family at Buckingham Palace for Christmas 2018. They normally would have jumped at the opportunity, but there's a problem. You see, one of these drone light shows from planning to execution is about a 3-month process. They had 3 weeks. So they went through and they started solving for all of the logistical and technical things that they needed to solve for, except they had one thing that they didn't know how to solve. You see, in order to fly drones over central London, where Buckingham Palace is located, you needed the approval of the British Aviation Authority, understandably. Well, one of the entrepreneurs did a bit of digging and found out that there was one exception to this rule. The airspace above Buckingham Palace was under the authority of the Queen of England. So they were able to get access to Prince Andrew, the Queen's son, who asked his mom for permission to fly drones over London, and it was granted. And so I proudly, as an advisor, sat there in the gardens of Buckingham Palace next to Prince Andrew and some other members of the royal family, and we saw this amazing drone light show with, as you see, Christmas lights and falling stars and all that stuff. And as I looked back behind me, there were hundreds of windows of Buckingham Palace, and I actually saw the Queen peek out. And later it would get back to us that she was very happy with the show. She called it quite impressive, which I actually like to think, what she really meant was it was frickin' awesome. So, my question to you is, how agile are you? Are you focused more on solutions than problems? Do you move things forward with speed and efficiency to get things done? And when an unexpected opportunity comes your way, do you take advantage of it? The third quality that successful entrepreneurs have is persistence. Persistence is a little bit different than the other two, I think. You see, you can learn to be more focused. You can learn to be more agile with experience. But persistence, I think, comes from a different source. See, I think you can only really be persistent if you're doing something you truly are committed to and believe at the very core of your being. You can't force somebody to be more persistent. And as you know, as you go through the process of building a business, you are faced with so many reasons to quit. There are so many opportunities to take the exit. Yet successful entrepreneurs stick with it. They don't take the exit ramp. Now, I could talk about the psychological impacts and present all sorts of studies to prove this, but instead I'd like to share with you a very simple graph that I came across the internet, source unknown, that I think perfectly encapsulates what persistence is in the life of an entrepreneur. And it's called the emotional journey of doing anything great. See, most of us, we start our businesses at the top left-hand corner. This is the best idea ever. And as you start executing it, you start going down that path. This is going to be fun. This is harder than I thought. This is going to take a lot of work. Until one day you find yourself at this precipice, this dark swamp of despair as you look over it. And in front of you is a rickety old rope bridge. And it's called persistence. And you walk through that bridge until you get to the other side. And the fact is that you will make that trip over and over and over and over and over again until one day, one glorious day, you will get to the other side of that bridge and not walk back it, but walk up to the other side where you also can claim that this is one of the things I am most proud of. That is persistence. Now, entrepreneurs bring persistence to life in different ways. One of the things that I've noticed is that they bring it to life through an unwavering belief in their mission. I saw an interview with Mark Zuckerberg on 60 Minutes. It's a news program in the United States. It was 2010. And in this interview, the reporter asks Mark, did you ever make a decision that was counter to what your advisors, your team, your board members wanted to do? And he gave it a little bit of thought. And he said, well, I guess it was when Yahoo wanted to buy us. You see, Yahoo had made an offer to buy Facebook for $1 billion. And Mark said, we had the opportunity to sell the company, but we turned it down. We weren't done yet. This is a 24-year-old kid, 2.5 years after he founded the company, saying no to $1 billion. Raise your hand if you would have said no. And it occurred to me, how committed do you have to be to your mission to say no to $1 billion at age 24 after 2.5 years of work? History shows us that he made the right decision, because 5 years later, Facebook would go public at a valuation of $100 billion, and now, under normal market circumstances, are worth about $500 billion. And of course, we know that it has completely redefined and revolutionized the way we communicate with each other and with the world. Looks like he made the right decision. The other way that entrepreneurs exhibit persistence is they maintain an unbelievable mental toughness under very difficult circumstances. And for this, I'd like to turn to a personal story. I've got a good friend. His name is Mark Wallace. We graduated from university together. And, I went to Cornell University, so there were a lot of quite successful people who came out of there. They became doctors and lawyers and bankers and media executives and so on. And every year we would get together as a group and we would talk about what we were doing in our lives, and people would boast about their salary raises or their bonuses or whatever they were doing in their corporate jobs. Not Mark. You see, Mark was different. He graduated with an engineering degree, and he decided he didn't want to work for a big company. He wanted to start something from scratch. And so he, in these meetings, would always kind of look at his shoes and say, yeah, I'm kind of plugging away, trying to build this little company. And we always kind of felt bad for him, right? Here we were trying to build our careers, and here was poor Mark toiling away at his little company. Well, he would sell that company, a company called Swap Drive, kind of an early version of Dropbox, for $100 million. I can tell you none of us sold anything for $100 million. And he would go on to do another startup, which is valued at more than $200 million. And I saw him actually for my 30th college reunion a couple of weeks ago, and I started chatting with him, and asked him, Mark, what was going on in your mind? What do you think is the key to your success? And he said, you know what? For 9 years, at least 4 times, I went home and told my wife, that's it. We're done. I can't pay my people. I don't have enough money for rent. There's no way I can make this work. But somehow, I managed to fix the problem. And the only difference between me and all those other guys out there who weren't able to sell their companies is I simply stuck with it. So, I'm here to tell you that there's no such thing as an overnight success. Entrepreneurs who build long-term sustainable companies, they have unbelievable focus, they have a clear vision for what they want to achieve and how they'll get there. They're incredibly agile, they're solving problems on an ongoing basis and saying yes to opportunities, and they have an unwavering belief in their mission and stick with it when the going gets tough. So my challenge to you out there is measure yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 in focus, agility, and persistence, and see where you are today, an honest assessment of where you are today and where you want to be 1 year from now. And make a commitment to yourself to take one step to achieve that higher level of focus, agility, and persistence. And if you do so, I'm quite confident that you will also learn the entrepreneur's secret and will enjoy the unbelievable rewards, both personal and financial, of building a successful global business. Thank you for your attention. One closing thought, if I could just have the screen up, just a second. If anybody's interested in getting a copy of this presentation for their records, just send me an email, zoltan.vardy@me.com, write Techsylvania in the subject line, and I'll send you a copy of the presentation and sign you up for my newsletter. Thank you very much.